Hey everybody, we're going to get started in just a few minutes. So if you want to grab your drink or do anything like that, get comfortable. We are about to get started. I will tell all of our panelists and our intro folks at Commerce Lexington to turn things on in just a few minutes. But for now, you've got another minute or two to get ready. Thanks. All right, everyone, we are going to get started. I am going to stop our lovely screen share that we have. Everybody's going to come in. Our speakers are going to unmute and turn their video on, and then we're going to get started. There were a few people who just messaged me, ironically, from the tech community who said, we're having a little trouble because Zoom just updated their client. So there are going to be a few people who are going to join us in about 2 seconds because the Zoom thing is updating. They did that as of May 1st. So with that being said, I will let Liz go ahead and get started to introduce this. It is being recorded, so anyone who's joining us in a few minutes will definitely be able to see the very, very beginning.
Great. Well, thank you all. Glad to be back at the 4 o'clock focus. Now we are meeting every 2 weeks, and we're happy to be back and bring you all some really up-to-date information, especially now that businesses are reopening. The focus changes a little, and that we kind of considered that when we started this, that it's, our topics are going to kind of be based upon need. And one of the needs that everybody's had is IT. So I don't think that's slowed down at all during this time. And I'm interested to see what your all's views of managing IT during this time and in the coming weeks and months. So with that, I'll turn it over to our fearless leaders, Debbie and Bill, and they will introduce our panel today. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot, Liz, and thank you, Bill, also for the partnership. We are really happy to work together with Commerce Lexington and have Tim and Brad with us today, and again, try to just be as relevant as we can be during a time when things are evolving, by the day, by the week, and hopefully helping business owners in this community with some valuable information. So as you know, we have Brad Lovell with Keeneland, and we have Tim Arthur with Alltech. Brad is Vice President and Chief Information Officer of Keeneland and has been with the organization for over 10 years. He has a pretty interesting background with experience in NASCAR and Brown-Forman, so I'm sure he's pulled from a lot of different experiences to bring all of that to Keeneland and be able to share with us today. Tim is Chief Information Officer for Alltech Biotechnologies and works with management information systems strategies for Alltech's offices in 128 countries. So quite a unique perspective, and I'm sure he'll be able to share some international learnings that he's had over the last few weeks. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brad. We think that people are going to be a little bit excited to hear about the latest things going on at Keeneland, and we know you're also probably saving some racing tips for us for the end. So Brad, thanks for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about your experiences the last few weeks.
Sure. So thanks so much for having us. And I think it's a good balance between Tim and I, because a lot of what I do is going to be sort of in a small to medium-sized company located in Lexington, Kentucky. And Tim has that global reach as well. So we both do IT, and we do things a little bit differently. But at Keeneland, we were unfortunate to not have the April race meet, which we were all disappointed about. But that's just kind of how the dice fell. But we're very excited to be able to conduct racing come early July. So after Churchill Downs finishes their race meet after the July 4th racing, we pick up on the 8th and we race for 5 days. And we're excited about that. It's going to be a great card. We're working that up right now. And there's a lot of interest from the horsemen, which is the reason why we're doing this race meet. Unfortunately, it will be spectatorless. Which I know a lot of people are disappointed. I hear that all the time, but we'll hopefully by come October, we will have figured this out and we'll have spectators in the stands. So outside of that, we're functioning very much like I'd say just about everybody on the call this morning. We're mostly healthy at home, right? So we've got a great human resources department and our operations folks who are managing through all that, and we are looking to be healthy at work come June 15th. So we will have sort of our non-essential, essential folks that need to be on the ground, especially in preparation for the race meet, to be there in the coming weeks.
Great. Well, tell us a little bit, if you've implemented any new policies with regard to keeping, if you have part of your workforce on site and part of your workforce at home, tell us a little bit about how you've been able to manage that from a technological perspective.
Yeah, it's Tim and I had this discussion, not but a couple of weeks. We're Tim and I are very close friends, and we talk probably once a week. So we do keep, and that's important to do that as well with your peers to know what's going on and take the learnings from what's going on with your peers. But I explained to him how in this time, where companies just have to be agile, whether it's very small proprietorships or up to people like Tim's groups, you just have to be agile. And one of the things that was interesting, we had discussions, our HR department came to our leadership team and discussed all about how wonderful it would be to have a flexible work schedule and people to work at home. And we just kind of scratched our heads and said, gosh, I don't know, we're such a traditional company and we're so conservative, and how do we manage that, and what do we do? And we said, we'll kind of pass. And then here we are, literally 2 months later, the IT department has to implement, work from home within 24 hours. So I do think we don't have any official policies that are laid out as it relates to that. But we will be, examining that, because we have seen where, in the past, we might not have had confidence in our workers who could be productive from home and take responsibilities for projects and all those kind of things. But it's proven to be, very, very, a very good thing. People have continued to work on, and at times it's 7/24, not just 5/8. But that's kind of what we're doing right now. And nothing's really changed policy wise. And we were very fortunate, Tim probably can add to this too, that we were positioned for this type of arrangement technically. We'd already put the pieces in place, and with our laptops, we already had VPN, and with our remote workers, we had already figured out how to do remote desktop and with some security and embedded on top of that. So we felt very lucky that we were prepared.
That's great. Tim, what can you add to the discussion around the similar topic about the balance of working partial workforces, working remotely, and partial on-site?
Yeah, thanks, and definitely concur with Brad on a lot of those topics. We had a unique situation in being a global organization. For example, in China, our offices there, we had already been hit a month, 2 months before the U.S. was having to deal with a lot of these issues. So we weren't caught nearly as off guard as many organizations that are just domestically aligned. So we had leadership that could jump in and help steer our other organizations. And Dr. Lyons immediately put together a task force that said, hey guys, let's get together. Let's have our leadership on a global basis, understand what's going on. How are we going to function as an organization? Which is a little unique in that every country is kind of handling this in a unique way. So they're not all just saying this is what the U.S. is doing. And for example, our leadership in Italy, as we know, was very heavily hit. We had a different perspective of leadership and how to deal with the government and how to deal with your workforce there differently than maybe what we were dealing with in China and then what we were doing here in North America as well. So just like Brad indicated, we were fortunate enough that we had already started down some of these roads and some of these programs before this actually hit. And Dr. Lyons used to always say, don't waste a good crisis. And that was a quote he always looked at. And so when we're looking at this, it's funny, there's more innovation that occurs during an actual crisis than all the other times that are being that companies are dealing with. And it's really funny how hard it is to get projects and procedures put in place during a normal workday. But during a crisis, it's amazing how those politics go out the window and you can get things literally implemented overnight. So from a workforce perspective, we were able to get them connected from home very quickly. Most of our workforce is remote anyway. So like Brad, we were in a good position. But then getting that workforce connected to our customers, because we never shut business down in any of our countries. We continued. We were considered a essential business around the world, helping feed the world. So we still had to figure out how to connect those employees not only to one another, but also connect those employees to the customers around the world. And so trying to get those folks to think differently and not just transactionally, that was probably one of the most unique things that we had to do. And like Brad, which he will cry here in a minute, because we had a very large conference that we had already scheduled, which we've done for 30 years in Lexington, that we had to pull the plug on. So, we normally have, 5,000 to 6,000 people from around the world coming into Lexington. So we had to pull the plug on that conference, and Keeneland was one of the facilities where we do an international dinner there of 3,000 or 4,000 people. So in a matter of a very short amount of time, we had to take that workforce, make them think differently about, do we want to continue and do we want to do this as an online event? Brad didn't have that option because it's pretty much dictated to around the world, but at least we scrambled in 70 days and completely changed that event from an in-person event to an online event, and it went from 5,000 people to 25,000 people. So
wow.
Hugely successful using technology. But once again, if we've been trying to do this for 4 or 5 years and we're never able to get it done because it was always the same old, but now this crisis came up, it was amazing how you could get it fully implemented in less than 70 days. From that standpoint. So that was probably one of the key things that we've seen change.
The turnaround time, I think you're exactly right. Like I have had more clients who have waited on certain things, and then when this happened, I think I've got a stat here that ADP had that within week 1, 28% of people were working from home. By week 2, it was 44%. So once that was hit, it was amazing. And so one of the things that we found was a big problem on the tech side. We had equipment issues. So I don't know how you all handled your equipment issues, but if you've already got laptops and people can work from home, no problem there. But the other piece was training them how to use these online collaboration tools. How did you all handle the training for that? Because that's one area that I'm reading right now is a budget portion for IT leaders that's actually going to get cut the rest of the year, which I think I have the opposite opinion. I'm thinking that's actually an area you need to invest in to teach people how to collaborate and use these tools. How are you all handling that? And either one of you, all right, lead in.
Brad and I had a similar discussion about this the last couple of days from a standpoint that training is a unique kind of bucket that you look at, and we've been doing training for a long time online as well as training our customers. But some things that go in there that you haven't thought of that I've had to deal with is I've actually had to hire people online to fill positions that I've never met and then try to figure out how to onboard them.
Yes. That's
probably, and also terminate them in an online environment and not necessarily face-to-face kind of deal. So I want to kind of expand that, not just training in the traditional, here, go learn a class, but you also have to figure out how to educate this workforce to, what your culture is. And a lot of folks know Alltech is very, very centered around who our culture is. So how do you relate that? And we do a lot of webinars. We do a lot of video calls. We do still try to do that person-to-person as opposed to just a recorded, here, go read stuff. We do have that as well, but we really try to emphasize that you're not just sitting out there on an island and talking to a computer. We really want to have people involved in that training process as well. So we've kind of combined all of those together, webinar with the content management in an environment. And I agree, Bill, you're going to have to accelerate that and not, now is not the time to cut. Now is actually the time to try to accelerate and get those innovations pushed through.
Yeah. And Brad, before you hit that training piece, I think there's a training piece not only for what I'll call our internal customers, right? Most of us serve internal customers. That's what our teams do. They help people inside an organization learn how to use this tech. But the other piece is teaching the tech people how to adapt to these literal weekly changes that are coming out from large providers like Zoom, Slack, Microsoft, et cetera. So Brad, how's that affected you guys at Keeneland? Because you've got a workforce, but you also have a support team.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is Tim has just recently picked up the Microsoft Teams, and he's had a lot of good feedback on that. And we had already adopted on the Zoom platform ahead of this as well. So we didn't have quite the learning curve as some that hadn't even, couldn't spell Zoom. But we're trying to figure out how to use it. And then, of course, they had so much take up on their services that, then there was some issues with their technology as well. And then there was privacy and all these other things that kind of came along with it. But to answer your question, yes, we do, especially from I'll kind of segregate that, if I will. My team as the IT department, obviously we're a little bit more familiar with technology and we adapt to it pretty quickly and kind of take it up and need probably a little less training than our general public. But we have already, there again, adopted some of the tools that you've talked about, which are Slack and these other tools to make sure that we can communicate effectively when we're not at the office. The rest of the world, our marketing team is pretty good. They use Basecamp, which has been another collaborative tool that those of you who have projects and want to work collaboratively but not be on site, that's another good tool to kind of explore as well. So I feel like we're, on a scale of 1 to 10, we're probably a good solid 7. And I agree with Tim. That's one thing that I always put in my budget, especially for my staff on the technology side, to always have budget to get people trained up on technology, and we'll continue to do that if we can.
So Tim, how many people did you all have to teach how to use Teams in essentially 2 to 3 weeks?
Well, we were lucky enough. We actually did the global rollout 2 weeks before the country shut down. So we were primed. So it was a catalyst that literally forced them to go do the things. But we use Zoom as well. So we've got a number of products that we've used. The interesting part is, being that we're a global organization, we do a lot of video calls anyways. And back in January, when the travel kind of started shutting down, we really got a lot of folks converted over to doing more video calls because they physically could not travel. That was even before, it was a work from home scenario. The other challenging part then was, well, you also have to train your customers. You also have to train your vendors. You also have to bring them into your ecosystem. So it's not just training the employees. So, you've got to bring in the entire force into your world. So that to me was another challenge. Brad may be familiar with Zoom. We may be using Teams. Somebody else may be using Facebook or whatever. And so how do you get all those different groups to say, wait a minute, we're going to pick a platform and this is what we're going to use this week?
Yeah. What do you think, hopefully we don't have another event like this for many, many years. We know that they will happen. But when it comes to planning for the tech, and it doesn't matter the size of the business, if you guys had 2 or 3 things to say, this is what I would love to, say from now on in our budget, in our training, whatever it may be, these are 3 things that we need to plan for that this thing's helped us realize. Give us 3 of those. Brad, start off with 3. And I know I'm catching you on the fly because we didn't talk about this ahead of time. But if you were going to name 3 things that you're like, all right, from now on, I've got to make sure to do these things so that technically we can do what we need to do to accomplish our job, what would those be?
Yeah, clearly having the right infrastructure, right? So we're going through additional auditing right now with the security audit and making sure that even if we're doing things like remote desktop, are we doing it with the right set of architecture? The other piece would have to be, and I hate to keep harking on security, but you need to have things in place to continue to invest in security so that you know what your vulnerabilities are associated with everything that's going on. And then I guess third, let me think about my third. I'll let Tim throw it over for his three. Maybe I can think up another one. But yeah, I mean that's something that we've not had in the past the ability to invest in, and we have this year. And I'm not going to give up on it. We've just initiated an MDR, which for those who don't know what that is, it's a managed detection and response, so that if something happens on your infrastructure, you get notified that there's vulnerabilities or malicious activity that's going on. And we've got a very small staff at Keeneland for IT department. To give you context, I have 6 employees, so that hopefully that helps you understand what we do. And but we've got a lot of things going on at Keeneland, and I don't want to get into the expansiveness of it, but we've got a lot of things out there at Keeneland, from access points to computers to servers to mutual machines to and on and on and on. And to keep track of all that is very it's very important, and make sure that you have all the patching done and all those kind of things. So our MDR that we got installed this year, I think, is something I would make sure that we were continuing to fund as we go forward.
Okay. Tim?
So to indirectly answer your question, I would say that the number one is not necessarily a technology piece, but it's a mindset, and that's flexibility, 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 flexibility. I see so many organizations that design their infrastructure and it's so rigid, and this is the only way that they can do things. And I think the one thing that we've learned is you have to be able to pivot in 24 hours at a moment's notice. And a lot of folks, call this, trying to closely align IT with business. And I've always taken the viewpoint that you should complement the business, not closely align to it. And what I mean by that is that you've got to have a wide enough bandwidth that the business can move rapidly and they're not waiting on IT. And so many folks, in order for them to move the business process rapidly, they're always waiting on IT to be able to do things. And this is a great example of looking at it and saying, IT, whatever the size of your company, needs to be at the table, having conversations and being part of the business every single day. You can't wait to a crisis and then bring the folks in and say, now we're going to teach you what the business is, and IT is, talking to the executives. Now we're going to explain to you how all those digital processes work. It has to be hand in hand. So the number one thing I would say is get everybody into a task force and have those conversations, and not plan for the next pandemic, but plan for the next whatever it is, and there'll be 100 more it's there, coming down the road. And I see so many folks trying to plan for this particular kind of disaster, and it almost never comes up, in that particular alignment. I've had the benefit of being global and seeing anywhere from government shutdown to takeovers to wars to to everything that you can imagine. So we're always assessing, just how are we going to function as a business first, and then how's technology. So from my perspective, this crisis, we ended up being the lifeline by being able to give communications to our executive team to be able to still meet and still function. That became the most important thing that we did. Back to Brad's infrastructure, it wasn't doing daily transactional stuff, but it was keeping the lifeblood going, keeping the communications going, keeping people in touch with one another. That became our primary focus. And I don't think in any scenario we could have foreseen that needs now to become our primary focus. So I would probably say those would be the top two in my head. And the third area is, looking at technology itself. is what systems, back to Brad on the security side, what things do you need to put in place to keep that lifeline going? Not necessarily to keep transactions going, but to keep that lifeline going so that it gives you a little bit of breathing room to then go out. You know, as we always say, we have to be able to make product, ship product, and collect cash in order to keep the business going. And if you can't do that, whatever your line of business is, you're gonna be stuck in a very quick amount of time. But businesses are different, from health to racing to manufacturing. So it's tough to just nail down a specific type of technology, because I think everybody's going to have a little bit of a unique. So from a general standpoint, those would probably be my 2 or 3 that I would look at.
Okay.
So Tim, I have a question, and Brad, for you too. Are there any, and I also want to remind the attendees that you all can ask questions as well. Just type those in on the Q&A, and we'll make sure we get these guys any questions that anybody attending has. But are there any tasks or responsibilities within your organization that you truly feel like you cannot do remotely or virtually, either for legal reasons or they're just simply too important for confidentiality? Have you had anything like that? And are there any best practices on when you just simply can't handle something virtually?
Well, being that we're a production facility, we have to have workers physically at the facilities to run the machines and physically produce the product. So, there's no way that we can not do that as a manufacturing facility. So that's number one. Number two, from an IT perspective, folks do physically touch devices in order to get connected. So from our perspective, it's a little different than Brad's. I mean, our team still has to somehow get the equipment, prepare the equipment, ship the equipment out to the users to be able to use if it's a new person, or if they have, catastrophic issues with their technology that they need to get something replaced. So those are a couple of the things that we physically still have to do. I mean, I'm sure there's ways that we can still work around by having the technology drop ship directly to the users wherever they are in the world, and then working remotely to set those devices up. So yeah, we still have that. But as an organization, we do have tasks, quality control, they still have to be at the physical facilities and have technology to be able to test the products. There are certain tasks and things that do still need to happen within our organization in order to function.
Sure.
And for us, it may not seem obvious, but it's pertinent. We as a track, and especially a training track, like you were mentioning, we probably have 1,000 horses right now at Keeneland, and that's 7 days a week. And to put some context around why we didn't have the April race meet was, we probably also, for those 1,000 horses, we probably have 600 or 800 people that actually live on Keeneland's property while those horses are there, between grooms and hot walkers and trainers and exercise riders and the rest of them. And, like I mentioned, it's a 7-day-a-week thing. So if something were to have happened in April where a groom who might have had the COVID and spread it, and because of close proximity, and all of a sudden now you are down 200 people and can't, attend to those horses, that's a big problem.
Big problem.
Big problem. But from a technology side, and I said this to Tim yesterday, is that, the IT department, and those of you who are in IT can probably relate to it. We've been mastering social distancing all our lives. We probably have master's degrees or PhDs in it.
That's true.
So, my programmers are thriving at home. My network guys are, remoting in or using VPN to do all their jobs. I do have an individual there with hands on the ground in case we need to have something turned on or delivered or fixed for, our security people are there on site. There again, we've got 1,000 acres. So we need maintenance people to continually mow and paint and that kind of stuff. So that's how we're doing it at Keeneland.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. Keeneland's got a wide open space where it can follow quite a bit of what's been recommended to be safe, which is really nice. And I'm sure there are probably some areas inside the various Alltech facilities that are the same. What I'm curious about now is, what if you were going to say, like, here are 2 or 3 things that every business, no matter what their industry, should keep in mind moving forward? Any words of advice for them in relation to not only the management of technology, but how they prepare people to use tech to work wherever they are? So, Tim, you're up.
Yeah. Number one, be patient. It's never going to work the way that it's supposed to work. And in
Right.
crisis, we always have 2 or 3 things. And I think the number one thing I took out of this, and that Dr. Lyons addressed from day one, is look after your people, look after your people, look after your people. You can have technology, but you don't realize that, yes, they may be working from home, and yes, oh, by the way, they've got kids sitting here that's screaming. That's, a different work environment. They're challenged even beyond just the physical technology. And you know what? They're also scared. They don't know if they're going to lose their job. They don't know what's going on with the whole world as well. So, trying to create an environment that's comforting for them, trying to help them adapt to this new paradigm. That's something every organization can do. And I've seen 2 or 3 organizations that send out communications once every 2 weeks. We send out communications every single day. We touch, base with our employees every single day, trying to reassure them that we may not have the answers, but, you're not going to hear it from somebody else. And so I think, as we're looking through that, we can't forget the people side of it. The technology is there as a tool for folks to be able to use, but we also have to understand what their situation is and how they're using that technology. So, and in our industry, we got folks that are all, basically PhDs, in technology, to people that barely know how to turn on their cell phone. And how do we create an environment for all of those folks that feels comfortable? So if they can't get their computer hooked up to their Wi-Fi, they don't know what to do. Well, we've already got a plan B of how they can use their phone to get into that call, so that it's as easy as can be, so that they don't miss those opportunities. So I think that's important. Don't make it too complicated.
Okay. And Brad?
Yeah, sure. And I echo everything that Tim said, because it's all pertinent. The piece that for those of you who are working with either a technology company to fulfill your services, or internally for your own benefit through your own IT departments, what I tell folks or ask folks to think about is that the IT department has sort of 2 sets of projects. We have IT projects, and those are the ones that you think about. We are going to install a new network switch, and it doesn't require anybody but technology folks. We're going to put a new wireless system, a new phone system. Those are technology projects. Everything else, the way I envision it and look at it and try and talk to the business people, is a business project. So I'll take, for instance, we're in the process of implementing some new technology related to the September sale, and it has to do with when you buy a horse at Keeneland. In the past, we have presented you with a piece of paper and a pencil, and you fill out the paper and you purchase the horse. And for the past number of years, I've advocated for having a different process. We have a sales system. So when you purchase a horse, we know who you are. You should be able to identify yourself and go through the process. And it goes right into the sales system from technology. But although I bring up potentially from time to time ideas that I think are relevant to the business, at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to have to operate those systems. And they're the ones going to have to communicate to their customers the benefit of those systems. And they're the ones going to have to advocate for the systems. And it's not Brad Lovell's project. It really is. I'll just use Bob Elliston since he's our vice president of sales. It's Bob Elliston's project. We are very in depth and ingrained in helping him succeed, but they have to really help us understand kind of the requirements, the rest of all those things to make it successful, and take ownership of being the project sponsor, and a lot of times perhaps even the project lead. We typically don't need to get to that level. We typically can lead the project, but they really have to understand that we're not doing it for IT's sake. We're doing it for the business's sake.
That's right. I found in so many situations there are things that because a computer system is involved, lots of people think that's IT. And it's like, no. That would be like saying that writing your document in Word is IT's responsibility. And so it's that joint effort to figure out what's the best thing for the business and working, at least with one department, but probably now multiple departments to make sure that the workflow is there. And so, yeah, I couldn't agree with you guys more that it's not only a multi-department thing where you've got owners of these systems, but also, Tim, to your point, everybody's got to kind of take it easy right now. Not only is it with tech and everybody knows it doesn't work right the first time. We haven't had a glitch so far on this, so one's about to happen. But the other piece
we lost Brad. Sorry, no.
Yeah. So the other piece to this is really to have patience, and I think one of the things, at least from a tech standpoint, we for our registrants today, we have a lot of tech companies who are on. It is learning to understand those soft skills. The tech skills are, they're a big deal. They're a very, very important part of this. But when the whole nation is a little bit wired right now with anxiety, I think, it's IT, it's my business. I've got to get this job done. I really need help right now. It's to kind of say, wait a minute, take a deep breath. We're going to figure this out together, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's multiple departments working together. I think that's a big deal. We are wrapping up sort of in our last few minutes, so I do have another question for you, and this might be a shameless plug, but we have a nationwide deficit of 500,000 IT jobs, and that was before everyone was working from home. Okay, so I'd like to hear your all's thoughts on this, and I know both of you are related to a particular organization. I'll let you mention it in your roles. And talk to us about how that organization might be working with people to expose them to how a business runs and what the opportunity in either IT and or STEM careers have, because I think it's really important for everybody who's a parent or a grandparent and thinking about how can I advise my young ones as to where to go in the future.
I'll start with this one, Tim, and then I'll let you take over sort of the particulars around the education side, because I know that Alltech is fully engaged in making sure people get educated on STEM. So what Bill was alluding to is both Tim and I are involved with Junior Achievement of the Bluegrass. And for those of you who don't know, Junior Achievement is our mission is to teach financial literacy, workforce readiness. And we have a really special place out on Spur Road, out Georgetown Road, which is called BizTown. And there's a 12 weeks of curriculum that the teachers teach students in the classroom, and then they come out for the capstone out to the BizTown, where they actually run an economy. And it's just really, really cool to think that fifth graders are in our Fayette County school system has been really generous to us and supporting us. But we reach our whole J of the Bluegrass reaches everybody that's on this phone on this call, and then right. But they learn how to run the economy. So we have 16 storefronts. Keeneland is one. We also have Chick-fil-A, and we have banks, and we have KU. We have TV stations that are involved. We have medical. So we expose people to all sorts of disciplines, and we help them understand that each of these companies they vote, and they have a CEO and a CFO for, I'll use Keeneland, and for all the businesses. And so they learn how those roles function, and they get a debit card, they get paid, and they use it to buy things from other businesses. So we buy, Keeneland would buy services from UPS, and UPS would buy services from Keeneland, and they understand how the economy works, and it's just so important to get them at that age and educate them on how the economy truly works. They have a mayor, they have policemen. It's really cool. Anybody who's interested in wanting to come out or even just have more understanding about what Junior Achievement does, reach out to me. I'm happy to take you out there, and it's just thrilling to see them. And it's organized chaos to see all those people. The UPS guys delivering packages, the KU guys, check leaders, the Keeneland persons, doing what they're doing. It's just amazing.
That's great.
But Tim, I'll turn it over to you for the rest of that.
Yeah, and one other program we have, which I think has been a huge success, is the Miss Biz as well, trying to promote women in business, and we get the whole community involved in that as part of junior achievement. It's kind of aligns a little bit. We do things such as Dr. Lyons. He's part of the Women in Agtech board, which is a global organization with executives such Microsoft and a number of different organizations are on this board of trying to get more women into science and technology, and how are we going to promote this so that it's not just looked at, especially on the ag tech side, that it's just a bunch, that it's just farmers or sitting on tractors or that mental image, but science is more about the labs and getting into even the BI and analytics area of things as well. We also have a program, it's called the Young Scientist Award, that we give out every year during the Alltech One conference. And the idea, once again, is get folks in high school and folks in college very excited about wanting to help change the world from feeding folks to how we consume technology. And our goal is to have 75,000 people apply for this every year from every country known, and we bring the finalists in and they get to present their projects up on the stage in Rupp Arena to folks. And that's just been an absolute incredible program we've put together. And if you go to the Alltech headquarters, this was very important to Dr. Lyons, the whole education piece. And when you walk into the front door, we're literally sitting on the front steps of our entryway is a globe with a child with a magnifying glass and the mortarboard on, trying to look at the area of education, of saying you should learn something every day. And another thing we're trying to do right now with our workforce is saying, while you're home right now, what are you going to learn? So you've got time, go learn something. Doesn't matter if it has to do with your job or not, but education is so important. Go learn a language, go learn a new programming, go learn something. So we're really, really trying to promote the idea of learning right now and continue learning, because, just like you said, what we're going to be dealing with next year is going to be a completely different problem than what we're dealing with today. So, let's be prepared for that, what tomorrow's going to look like.
And Bill, if I could just add one more thing, and Tim saying that people on tractors, is equivalent to, farming, as an IT and a technologist from all my career, I think that's one of the things that we have to overcome is that, when you're in technology, you're just not behind the keyboard all day, looking at the screen, doing things. There's so many things that you can do with a technology background, whether it's math sciences, computer science, whatever that you decide to get into. And I came in with a computer science degree, and here I am. As Debbie mentioned, I've had wonderful opportunities to work with some great companies. I mean, I've designed systems that manage wood, and I have, scoring systems, and it's just been a really interesting career, and it has a lot of opportunities. And to your point, there's a lot of openings for people who want to get involved. And yes, it's a little hard, but it's not beyond hard, that's for sure. I mean, I know people who have finance degrees or get CPAs, and God, that sounds just as hard as getting a computer science degree to me. So I would, if your kids have any questions about what we do in technology, there again, feel free to reach out to me or Tim or Bill, and we're happy to discuss, the breadth and scope of what happens within technology.
Yeah, and we, I will say that there are some, call it techier items that we could get into. My company is going to start our version of this that is very tech focused, outside of just the different industries that we do with Commerce Lexington right now. So there are some other tech things that I'll probably pull you guys into that one for, so that we can talk about that. I will say though that I think that what we discussed today is not only applicable for almost any size business, but also where we are headed and some of those changes and things that people need to think about. And Tim, to get back to your comment, which no offense, Brad, might have been one of the best ones, is we all need to take a deep breath and realize stuff's not going to work the first time right now, because everyone is a little bit stressed out and we have a ton of things going on. So I do appreciate you all being on here. If they do want to follow up with you, what I'll do is I'll put some general contact info. I'll have them reach out and be able to get in touch, not only about junior achievement, but Keeneland, Alltech. And then Tim, quick question for you. Can people already register for 2021's conference?
Absolutely. That's already up and online. We've already got the dates associated with it. We are going to do an in-person conference next year. And so now we're going to take all the knowledge we've learned this year of doing it online, and we're going to do a hybrid. So we're going to have still the in-person as well as the online content at the same time. So
that'll be great. And then Brad, I know we're racing without spectators, but can we at least show up in the parking lot?
Unfortunately not. And here, there's opportunity, right? So,
yes.
The races will be going on, and I'll give my shameless plug. Keeneland has an ADW, an off-track wagering platform that's online. It's called Keeneland Select. We would love to have you all support that platform. There's others. We all know that. The money that we derive from that. Matter of fact, this past April and May, the proceeds from Keeneland Select, not in whole, but a good portion of it went to nourish the backstretch to help folks that are on the backstretch. So we use our funds for things that are industry related and for our purses. Where others, are kind of more profit driven for their shareholders, which is fine. But so you can get on Keeneland Select. This is the thing. You get your friends together, an account. You get your friends together. You stream it up on your Samsung TV from your Samsung cell phone. I know a lot of y'all have iPhones, but Samsung did it wonderfully.
I've got BlackBerry. Does it still work?
Yeah.
But you can watch and take beverages along with you and enjoy the racing from Wednesday to Sunday. And the good thing is you'll recognize the names of the races. We'll have the Toyota Bluegrass. We'll have the Ashland, Central Bank Ashland, and we've got a great card with all of our stakes races from the spring to enable people to press forward.
Well, maybe we'll invite everyone who's attended these events to a Zoom webinar watch party and pull that up just for everybody to do that.
Great idea, though.
Debbie, do you, so guys, thank you all for very, very much for being a part of this. Debbie, do you want to kind of tease into what our topics might be? And again, one thing to note, we are not doing this every Wednesday now. We're doing it every 2 weeks. So we will not have one next week, but the week after. So Debbie, if you want to talk about what we're going to do after that.
Sure, absolutely. And again, thank you, Brad and Tim, for your participation today. And thank you to all the attendees. What we're trying to do, as Bill mentioned, by going every other week is just to make sure we know businesses are reopening and people are getting busier. And so we want to make sure that we're respectful of everybody's time and also as relevant as possible with, remaining current. So we have asked a few local media companies to participate with us in 2 weeks to talk a little bit about not only how they plan to continue to keep the communities informed of issues related to COVID-19, and then of course current issues in each of our communities that are going on. But they also then are going to share a little bit about how they're going to help businesses kind of reestablish their advertising that they may have put on pause during times when they were forced to be closed or had a reduction in business. So many local media companies are giving a lot of great incentives to local businesses, and it might be a really good time for even business owners who maybe haven't done a lot of external marketing to learn about a way that they can affordably participate. So we'll have that in a couple of weeks. We'll send out some information. Last but not least, please fill out your survey. Bill will send out the recording link to this so you can share with friends, and then please fill out the survey. And if you have future ideas for attendees, we would love to hear them. So thanks again, everybody, and have a great night.
Yep. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.